So it's Wednesday, October, as I record this, and I wanted to take a minute and talk about a false belief that is in the tax world that a lot of people have. And that false belief is that I missed my window and now it's too late to file anything. And I understand this false belief very well because I was once in that situation. If you don't know, my story is I got into the whole tax world through fixing my own problems. Back in the mid 2000s, I had gone several years without filing taxes because I thought I didn't need to. And then I started getting letters from the IRS saying, hey, you owe us $1.3 million. So fixing that whole situation, it was the beginning of my journey into the tax world and ended up leading me to where I am today. So I do know how it can feel when we miss a deadline. So just on Monday was October 16th, which was the extension deadline for individuals and corporations, assuming you didn't have a disaster relief extension, which a lot of our clients in Florida did. If you missed it, you might feel like, oh no, what do I do now? In this tax Sherpa stories, I want to talk about how this all works. Yes, you are supposed to file by the various deadlines. Let's just take individuals. You're supposed to file your 1040 every year by April 15th. If you can't get it in by then, you're supposed to file an extension. And that extension gives you an automatic 6-month extension from April to October, which is the deadline we just passed just the other day. And then the extension, though, is only for filing paperwork. It's not an extension for paying tax. So if you don't get all your tax paid by April 15th, they're going to start charging you on top of whatever the base tax that you owe is. So what happens if you miss April and you miss October and maybe you miss the next year? I went, I think, 3 or 4 years without filing because I didn't really have any taxable income. And after the first year or two, you start to get really nervous because you start thinking these things in your head is what happens if I file now and then they see that I didn't file before, and then is that going to trigger something in the IRS systems? And maybe it's just better if I just ignore the whole thing and don't file ever again. And they get into these weird thought patterns because the IRS is so terrifying out there. And I'm here to tell you that what the IRS wants is compliance. The compliance is a big word in the tax world. And they want people paying whatever the law says to pay, and they want people filing what the law says to file. If you have missed a year or several years or whatever, the fix is go ahead and file those things. You file those years, file the tax returns that you're missing. If you were getting refunds during any of those times, and obviously everybody's situation is different, but if you were, then they don't assess any penalties because the penalties are always based on how much tax you owe. If you're getting a refund, which most people who have W-2 jobs do get, unless that's a weird situation, then you're fine. If you owe money, they will charge you penalties, and the penalties depend on what type of penalty and how long it's been. Because there's failure to file, there's failure to pay, and then there's just regular interest. What that amount is going to depend on the time period. It's going to depend on the situation, whether you file extensions, whether you didn't file extensions, how much the tax is, all those kinds of things. And you have to be aware of all that. But the answer is not just stick my head in the sand for the rest of my life and hope it goes away. It's not. Eventually, you'll be getting those letters that I was getting. I've seen people come in and I haven't filed in 10 years, and 10 years is statute of limitations. So some people try to escape out on that, but we've had to file 10 years of tax returns at a time. And it's difficult, and it can be a lot of paperwork to do, depending on what you had and the state of your records and everything. If you're missing records, one of the easiest ways to figure out what you're missing is to get your tax transcripts. So anybody can go onto irs.gov and can create an account for their personal social security number. And they'll ask you some identity verification questions, which doesn't work for everybody. But for most people, they seem to have got a lot better as far as getting those systems to actually verify you are who you are, and then they allow you access. If you create one of those accounts, you can log in, and there's a transcript section where you can download whatever transcripts they have on file for you. And there's 4 different kinds of transcripts. You should download all of them. And then you can take those to a tax preparer and say, here's what I got. And this is everything the IRS has. Because if you get a W-2 or a 1099, one copy is sent to you and one copy is sent to the IRS. The IRS keeps their copy, and that's what goes into your transcripts. And that goes into what's called the wage and income transcript. And there's tax return transcript, there's an account returns, there's an account transcript, and so on. So you can go online and download those as PDFs. And then they do, as of a few years ago, they made a change where they blank out some of the information in terms of like the name of the parties. But you can usually figure out. So if it says like FIDEL and it's a 1099 DIV, that's Fidelity. That's you got a 1099 dividend from Fidelity for some account that you have. If it's a W-2, you'll see the first however many letters of the employer name and tax ID. So you can usually figure out what's going on based on that. And then if there's things outside of official reporting, so if you have your own business, you're a Schedule C filer, where you have a small business that it gets included in your personal tax return, then you got to dig up your own records, bank accounts, credit card statements, or whatever it is that your particular business is dealing with in terms of transactions. And you can go to a good tax professional, and they'll be able to help you reconstruct what happened during those years. Hopefully you get good records, but this is real life, so a lot of people don't. That is the false belief that if I miss a deadline, then that's it, and that's the end, and we're stuck from the rest of our lives. So there are fixes, and you definitely want to be proactive before you start getting those letters like I did. I started getting the letters in I think 2007, maybe. But yeah, it's not fun. So better to get the problems fixed ahead of time before those start coming in the mail. So if you need help, reach out to us, taxsherpa.com. You can go in there, book an appointment, and we can go over your individual tax situation and figure out what's best for you. Talk to you guys next time.